All right, so in the most exciting course in the College of Business, this may be the most exciting chapter that we've covered so far. So let's finish this chapter. Colin's shaking his head no. Come on, Colin, you know how exciting this is. All right. So what we're talking about is new branches. And I don't know, that gets me fired up. Branching out gets me excited. So let's talk about new branches. All right, so banks will consider many of the same factors when opening a branch as they do when opening a new bank. In other words, they're looking at demand and supply. Okay, how many banks are out there? How many customers are out there? How much money is out there? Is it needed? So here's a little ratio that banks look at. Population per branch. And here we go. Looks like this. So you look at the total population in the area to be served, and I'm sure there is a footprint. The book doesn't go into this, but I'm sure there are studies that are done as to how far people are going to drive in order to get to a branch. And I'm sure they'll probably stick a pin on the map right here, and they'll go, okay, people will drive 10 minutes or 10 miles, depending on the density of the area. And so the branch location is there, and so they're going to just do one of those deals there, and everything in this area, they're looking at the population. To see how many branches there are in this area and how many people there are to be served. Okay? Does that make sense? Pretty simple, straightforward. All right, so obviously, the more people and businesses that are there, and they're looking at the demographics as well, they're looking at the age, they're looking at the income levels, that kind of thing. And they are going to locate offices in the most lucrative areas first. Okay? So you've got a certain amount of fixed cost that you have at the bank. You got IT, and you have compliance, and you have accounting, and you have marketing. And now what you want to do is open up as many branches as you can in areas that need to be served so that you can spread these fixed costs over more areas and more people. Economies of scale, which is also why Bank A buys Bank B, for the very same reason. Because you have Bank A that has this, and then you have Bank B that has this. And typically when Bank A buys Bank B, they're going to cut this by 3/4. So they can pick up all of Bank B's branches and only increase their fixed costs maybe 1/4 of it. Okay? So by having the two banks merge, you can immediately, if nothing else happens other than cost cuts, you can immediately improve the profit margins for the surviving bank. Okay? So that's one big reason why banks merge, is for economies of scale, get a larger footprint into an area, and cut their expenses. All right, so banks also do a capital budgeting, go through a capital budgeting process. So yeah, you finance majors can maybe get into the department, the M&A department of a bank, and look at what it costs to open up a new branch. So you're going to have to pay some money up front, okay, to establish the property, plant, and equipment in an area. Okay, why are you doing that? You just, like any other business, because you expect to earn a return, to generate cash flow by opening up that branch. Part of it is offensive, meaning you want to establish your company in that area. Part of it is defensive, meaning you want to get there before other people get there and try to keep them out of the market. Okay? And when you establish your presence, if someone else wants to go in there, one of their options might be to buy you. So if you get there first, you become an attractive takeover candidate. And that happens a lot with banks. Okay? A lot of folks will talk to existing regional banks or super regional banks or national banks, and they say, okay, when you make an acquisition, what is it that you're looking for? And the national bank or the regional bank will describe what they're looking for, and then that entrepreneur will build his or her company up to meet that description so that they can sell to the regional or to the national bank. That's their whole plan. Okay? And that happens in banking, and it happens in a lot of other businesses. All right. So you have a cash outflow, and then you have your operating cash inflow. Okay? Now I have to tell you that the internet has just changed thinking about business overall. Okay? Your physical location used to be really, really important. It's not nearly as important for a lot of businesses now. Now that you can take care of business over the internet, you don't need to. Now, if you're a dentist, that's not true, because a dentist cannot fill a cavity online. Okay, but if you're selling products and services that can be transacted online, then your physical location just isn't nearly as important. And in fact, it's an impediment because you've got money invested in it. So you really have to look business to business now to determine what is the best investment that you can make to increase sales to penetrate the market. Okay, so things have really changed. All right. Okay, this is kind of interesting. Other factors that impact locations for new branches. All right. So how volatile will the business be for a branch? And this is due to economic conditions in that area. So population density and the number of people in an area, that's one thing that banks will look at, but the makeup of the area and the fluctuations of income. So if this area is dependent on, let's say, General Motors, okay, that might be a scary thing, or a big chemical plant, okay? But if you've got a hospital and a university that are major employers as opposed to a chemical company and a car company, which do you feel a little more confident in terms of the stability of the businesses? Well, I'm going here, okay? Because if these guys have layoffs, this bank is going to be impacted dramatically. Their loan losses are going to skyrocket, okay? All right. So then, how does this branch, so how the branch operates on its own is one issue, and then how the branch operates in conjunction with other branches is another issue. So what does that sound like to you? You're looking at covariance. Where have you heard that before? So you're looking at the volatility of the individual branch, but you're also looking at how that branch interacts with other branches and other businesses at the bank. Where have you heard that before? Anybody? How about investment management? How about portfolio theory? Okay, diversification, correlation. That's what we're talking about. It's the same thing. Okay, and so CEOs look at this very closely as they're building their business. They're looking at variance and covariance to put together a business that is more stable. Okay? All right. So adding a branch was going to affect how the bank's overall portfolio operates. All right, so you might look at one bank as a standalone, one branch as a standalone, and go, that is not a good deal. But when you throw it into the portfolio, that might help stabilize other areas of the bank's portfolio. Okay? It's smart business. And understanding that, okay, is going to give you a leg up coming out of school. Because if your bank president is 60, he or she has probably forgotten about this. Studied it so long ago. And I had that experience when I went to work as a lobbyist. Our executive director had a political background but didn't have a business background, and I was able to teach that guy a whole lot about what I had learned in graduate school and helped him out quite a bit. So you'll be able to do that too. All right, this is kind of a cool idea, in-store branching. In-store branching. So a growing number of financial service branches are located inside retail locations. Okay? Like malls and individual stores. Okay? And the first thing that comes to mind in Searcy is Walmart. Okay? So Walmart houses some of their own in-house efforts, but they also partner up with other companies that like to build inside of a Walmart store. So why do they do it? Well, first, the finish out on an in-store location is a whole lot less. You don't have to buy the land and you don't have to build the walls. You just have to bring in a contractor who's going to finish out that space. So it's much quicker to build, and it's much less costly, and it's much easier to maintain. Okay? So they become profitable earlier because their costs are lower. Also, they tend to operate longer hours. They'll be open typically, and they'll be open as long as the store is. Now, sometimes they'll close earlier, and sometimes you'll have an outside location or an outside access point, like a door that you can go directly into the financial services company. But sometimes you won't have that option. You have to go in the front door of the store, which is why the store does it to begin with. If we put a bank here, then some people will come into our store to go to the bank. While they're in the store, they'll buy something. Okay? So there's a lot more people walking around in Walmart than are walking randomly on Race Street. Those people that are walking on Race Street or Main Street randomly, you don't want them to come into your bank anyway, right? And I had an interesting experience. I was in Jackson, Mississippi on Friday night. We had to make a little road trip and pulled in to get gas, and in the middle of the parking lot there was a young guy standing there, and he was screaming at people as they came by. He was just walking around and he was mad, and he was yelling at people, and he threw over a trash can, and he threw over, you know where you get the window cleaner out of the bottom with the handle and you pull it up, he threw one of those over, and he was yelling at people. He banged on this guy's window one aisle over from me. I called 911 and said, man, and they said, where are you? I said, well, I'm somewhere around the State House in Jackson. We pulled off to get gas, and the dispatcher said, oh, I've got your location. And I said, I'm getting out of here because he's walking in my direction, and honestly, I'm kind of scared. So I'm gonna put it in gear and I'm out of here. So I don't know what happened, but he was mad about something. Y'all ever run into that? He was just screaming at people, and I don't know if he was drugged up or if he was just mentally ill. When you go into the bigger cities, you see a lot of mentally ill people. I've spent a good bit of time in some bigger cities like New York, and they're just walking around the streets and they're talking to themselves, and it's pretty crazy. All right, traffic flow. That's what we were talking about, traffic flow. All right, you don't want those people coming in. All right, let's talk about closing branches, okay? So, part of the FDIC Improvement Act of 1991 requires banks to notify customers 90 days before a branch closes. So, you'll get an email, you'll get a letter, the bank will probably have an ad on the radio or newspaper or television informing their customers that they are closing a branch, so you've got to give people notice so that they can move if they want to move. Okay? And then the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977 requires banks to adequately serve markets. So when a bank has to apply to close a branch, okay, they have to go to the regulators and say, we want to close this branch. And one of the reasons they have to do that is because the Community Reinvestment Act will force the regulators to look at that service area, and they may or may not approve the closure of that branch. If that branch deprives that area of adequate banking services, then they will not approve of it, and they'll tell the bank, you can't close that branch. You must continue to serve that area, okay? And so that's all part of making sure that banks take care of their business areas, that they don't discriminate, things like that. Okay? So that's kind of an interesting thing, that you cannot just open and close branches like as you want to. Okay. So technology, once again, we've said it 18 times already. We'll say it 18 more times before we get out of here this semester. Point of sale terminals, that's where you're running your card at the cash register, is a big growth area for banks. Okay, so there's a fee associated with each swipe, and the customer pays part of that fee, and the retailer pays part of that fee. So when someone says, I do not accept cards, the reason is they don't want to pay the cost of having the point of sale device in their store. There's a rental fee involved with that. And then they don't want to give up the 2 or 3%. And particularly if they've got a low profit margin to begin with, a low gross margin, like on groceries, then they don't want to give 2 or 3% might be half of their gross margin. So they're saying, we'll take cash or a check. Okay? All right, ATM's a big deal. And then, so internet banking was big a few years ago, and now it's all about mobile. Okay? So, the book is a little bit old, and so they felt the need to describe which customers can do with mobile banking. You're more familiar with this than the author is. All the different things that you can do. And like I said a few classes ago, it used to be that if you wanted to move money from bank A to bank B, the only way to do that was to do a wire. And a wire service is something that's provided by the Federal Reserve. And there are time limits. You've got to get a wire order in before 2 o'clock in the afternoon if you want it done before close of business. And it's $25 to do it. And the bank A has to have wiring capabilities, and bank B has to have wiring capabilities for you to do that. And so it's not nearly that difficult anymore. I have accounts at Regions and accounts at Simmons, and I can write a check from one bank to the other, take a picture of it with my mobile app. Can't do it using the internet service that they have, but using the mobile app, I can take a picture of a check that I've written myself from one bank to another and get that done. All right. I thought about starting chapter 5, but we're just gonna leave it there. So we need to take another test on 3 and 4. So would you all prefer to do that like on Friday, or would you rather do it on Monday? Monday? That song says Monday. Okay, so we'll move on. I'll post chapter 5, and we'll move into chapter 5 on Thursday, and we'll take a test on 3 and 4 on Monday. Now, the lectures, let me go ahead and shut this down. Peace out. Shalom.